Hey there, running late.
To make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Here we go. Hello everybody, Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, running late. Didn't realize I was running late. Just having a little bit of supper with the grandkids and watching them devour hamburgers. So my apologies for being a little tardy. Hey, only got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. Bring your questions, and you guys know the drill. If you will type hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section, click like, share this to your timeline, you're eligible for a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss mug drawing. And actually, we have a winner. Kyle Edwards from Blue Mountain, Mississippi. You get a Pond Boss mug and a Pond Boss hat. I've had a fun few days, and I got a number of things I want to talk about tonight. So you guys bring your questions, and we'll talk about that. But I've got three things basically on my mind. And you know how I like to do this. I'm going to call it up on my laptop so I can see the quality of the feed and see who all's on. Billy Bates from Southern Maryland. Travis Paul Smith, good to see Travis. Bill Russell, good to see Bill. April Stone. Let me see who else we got here. Reed Gaston, Derek Davis, Mike Brutterly. Bill Russell. All right, that's great. Good deal. I'm glad y'all are joining me tonight. Steven Stupa. Sweet. All right, so I've kind of got a mediocre website connection because I'm way out in the country, and we haven't figured out how to get high-speed Wi-Fi out here other than through a satellite dish. Hello, Chuck Brinkman. Good evening, buddy. Let's see here. Katie Cooner. Hello, Katie Cooner. Frank James. Good to see everybody. So I got basically three topics I want to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about lake design. I want to talk about water quality just a little bit because I've seen some things here lately. There's Fred Bingaman checking in. Good to see Fred. And I want to talk a little bit about genetics. And I think genetics is going to be an upcoming hot topic in the next few years. So let me knock out these others first. Lake design. I've been working with a guy out of Houston who's got about a 40 or 50 acre lake on a hunting ranch down south of San Antonio near Carrizo Springs in the South Texas brush country. And he's had some pretty good fortune. He was able to sell all the water in his lake to an oil company that needed water for fracking or something. So I see Clint Benbow from North Carolina. Uh-oh, I messed that up. I need to fix that. Holy cow. I have no idea what I just did. I made it switch around. You gotta be kidding me. All right, we're gonna do it this way. Then I can see it. Oh Lord. Lusk. I don't know how I did that, but I did it. So, here we are. You can see the bedroom I'm hanging out in. All right, so I'm gonna go this way, and I just turn it around where it's facing me the other way, and I can see it in a mirror. Oh boy, I'm so technically incompetent. Jeff McKenzie, Grand Saline, good to see you. Lake design there. I'm gonna have to do all this on my laptop now. So, working with a guy that's got a pretty nice lake down there, and about every 3 years he has a fish kill because the lake vegetates too much. So the owner before him built a dam and impounded about 50 acres of water with an average depth of 2 feet. So this new owner, who's had it 10 or 12 years, decided he could try to manage it as is, not really understanding the significance of the shallow water. So he stocked it, managed it, vegetation took over, 3 years in, fish killed. So he said, okay, that's an anomaly because we had an extra hot summer that year, 2015 or whatever it was. And so he restocked it, started over, 3 years later, catching great fish kill. And so he called me. He's been subscribing to Pond Boss for quite a while. And he called me and he says, hey, I really need some help with this. So I went down there with him, I don't know, 7 or 8 months ago, and he'd sold the water out of his lake and gotten a pretty good chunk of money for it. So I said, you know what? If you want to do this, you're going to have to bite the bullet. I mean, you add the dollars you got for that water and the cost of a new bass boat, you can take this lake down and dig it a lot deeper. So he's hauled a whole lot of dirt out of there. He's had 2 scrapers and a track hoe and a bulldozer, mostly scrapers, 2 pan scrapers that are 24-yard scrapers going for about 40 days. And I didn't do the math, but it looked like he's moved over 150,000 cubic yards of dirt out of the basin of that lake. So the mission yesterday, he called me on Sunday and says, hey, can I come get you and you guys go, or you go with me and let's take a look at my lake and let's decide what to do about habitat. I said, sure, let's do that. So this is where the fun lake design comes in. And this is my favorite thing to do. I'm telling you, my very favorite thing to do. Well, now the lake went from averaging 2 feet in depth to more like, it'll end up being average over 6 feet in depth with a lot of water 10 feet deep and deeper. Now, to keep the dirt moving expense down, I had them build 4 peninsulas. And those peninsulas are really big. They're probably 15 feet across, about 8 inches above full pool water level, with kind of a big wide crown where the end of it, the reason we made them so wide is so the mower, the tractor guy, can go to the end of it and turn around. You know, so it's about 2 brush hogs wide. So he can mow one side, turn around, mow the other side, and be efficient with it. And that's part of how we made that choice. So now, beyond those peninsulas, it's just nothing but a big bare clay bottom. So we decided after they get through moving all the dirt, we did let me backtrack a little bit. On the upper end of the lake, where there was a huge amount of shallow water, which made the average really, really, really shallow, there's a lot of 6-inch to 18-inch deep water. So as we put the plan together just a few months ago, it was, hey, why don't we build a levee across that ultra shallow part, and let's just turn it into a wetlands and take 6 to 8 acres of that shallowest part of the lake, don't excavate it, and let's build a levee across it, put some flashboard like agri-drain drains in it where you can regulate the level, and let's take that upper part and turn it into a wetlands for migratory waterfowl. So that's what he's done. And he took quite a bit of the dirt, built a levee across the upper end, straight across it, and then I had him today start working on a sump on the marsh side, the wetland side. He's going to dig a pit about 1 bulldozer blade wide, and then we're going to put bluegills in it. So now not only is it a good wetlands project, it's also a bluegill hatchery pond, because what they'll do is they'll plant plants in it, like in late May or June, let them grow up and then flood it early August. And if there's a pit with a few fish in it, if he's got even 100 bluegills in it, when he floods that thing, he's going to get fall spawns of bluegills, and then he'll get early spring spawns of bluegills, hunt ducks over it, and then next spring, late March, early April, after the bluegills have spawned again, then he can drain them all into the lake part, the big part of the lake, and end up, our best guess is he could have somewhere between 20 and 80,000 bluegills that he can grow in that wetland, which will help him on his food bill. Because all you folks that watch this show know that at some point, the limiting factor is going to be food. Now, while we were there, we talked about water quality. And something I've seen all over the nation where it's been raining a lot is the rainfalls in summer tend to disrupt the harmony of the water. And you know my term, happy water. You got to have happy water. If you don't have happy water, nothing else matters, because then we're talking about fish kills. So with happy water comes stability and some semblance of autonomy. I saw Chuck Brinkman there, and he knows what's going on. Let me see here. We got other folks checking in. There's Danny Mack, Jeff McKenzie, great. We saw Grand Salim. That's cool. Todd Austin, William Jewell. I see your question. I'll get it in a minute. Mark Wyman. Hey, Trevor. Shot Vet. Good to see you, buddy. And Christopher Aguilar, Daddy is here. Yes, he is. The Boudin Man. So, anyway, what's going on with some of this water quality, and I'm seeing it right here. I'm hanging out at Running River Ranch, which is my son and daughter-in-law's place outside of Brenham, Texas, near Washington on the Brazos. They've got a 1-acre pond, and boy, I've noticed when I got down here a couple of weeks ago for the first time in a couple of weeks or months, there was a whole lot of what looked like floating green paint, which was either planktonic algae or a mix between planktonic algae with some blue greens in it. But it only showed up in the afternoon. So some of it was dying off, floating to the top. He's got an aeration system, so it was pretty much evenly dispersed across the surface of the pond. Well, it stayed like that for about 10 days. Well, I noticed just a couple of days ago, it's dissipated. The water's got its healthy green look, so the water's stabilized. So where I'm going with this is after a rainfall, especially where there's enough rain to add a volume of water or flush a volume of water, meaning 10 to 20% exchange of water or an addition of 10 to 20% volume of water, then you're going to see that water destabilize, meaning that the bloom that you had may die. Then a new one starts. Or you'll see planktonic algae or blue-green algae crank up, especially in the summertime, like where we are now. Well, and what happened out here was it took about 10 days post-rainfall for that water to stabilize itself with living organisms, plankton, phytoplankton, zooplankton, healthy algae. And now the water looks exactly like you'd want it to look this time of year. The visibility is about 24 inches. And it's got a beautiful green tint to it. And I walked around it today, and it was just loaded up with baby bait fish. Whole lots of little bluegills. I saw some gambusia. Bluegills I saw were anywhere from 1 inch to 2.5 inches to probably 4 inches. Then the big ones, that are 3/4 of a pound. I touched the feeder off, and they just fed like crazy. So I know that water's pretty happy. I see Jason Nepstad checking in. Nancy Bishop. Then the third thing I want to talk about is genetics. Before I get there, before we get too far from the Trevor loves the song, Mr. Pond Boss. I'll tell you that story next time I get to Granbury, which will be, I don't know, a week or so. All right, let me go back here. Let me see some of these. Make sure I'm trying not to miss any of your questions. Okay, I'm scrolling back and I'm going to scroll up. Let's see. Travis wants to know about that new grandbaby. Oh my gosh! If y'all would, if I was comfortable going to, she's right around the corner. Mama's taking care of her right now, but she is an absolute little champ. She's now, I guess, 8 days on the earth, and she sleeps 6 hours a night. Which I don't know about you guys, but that is amazing. That baby sleeps 6 hours a night, and Mama can't believe it. All right, Jeff McKenzie, we can talk about lake design. 31 acres, you have a 31 acre lake design or 31 acres and you want a lake on it. So I'm glad you're here. Happy to help you or refer you to somebody that can help you. Danny Mac, hey Bob, I had other things in mind after the pool and the sauna that, attaboy. I can read that innuendo just a little bit, Danny Mac. I had other things in mind after a pool and sauna. And then after your show, catch the sunset on the pond. However, the pool and sauna continued for hours. I was about to miss. Well, I'm glad you didn't miss the show, Danny Mac. We need to hang out here before long. But anyway, surface water temps are reaching the mid to upper 80s in the day. Fish are feeding better than ever. It seems kind of surprised. I got a feeling that your water temperature in the upper 80s is only going on in the afternoon. If you were to check it early in the morning, it's probably down in the upper 70s. And if that's the case, that's a pretty big reason why the fish are feeding. Plus, another reason is bluegill don't mind it being hot. They don't mind it being, 85, 86 degrees. They're going to come and eat if they're hungry, which, at that temperature, they're going to metabolize their food really fast. And so they're going to be anxious to eat more. William Jules says, hey, Bob, I emailed you a few days back. I'm catching up on emails. I have been surrounded by midgets for the last 3 weeks all over the state of Texas. We've been with them in 3 different places, had a whole lot of fun, came here and helped tended to the 2 big brothers while Mom prepared and then gave birth, and then after that for a few days. So I got about 5 or 6 days behind on emails, but I'm catching up pretty fast. Okay, stocked 175 channel catfish. They aren't coming to feed. Hundreds and hundreds of frogs. Think maybe they're eating on frog eggs? No. They're not eating on frog eggs. Hand feeding 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Maybe hiding under the lily pads, 1 acre pond. Bluegill feed like crazy for 200 plus. Plenty of spawning beds. 3 blue catfish in there. 10 to 20 pounds. And 1 channel catfish about 15 pounds. Got 1 blue catfish out last weekend. Don't you think they ate all the channels? I'm going to tell you this. If you've got a lot of bluegills, And that's what those blue cat and channel cat are used to eating. Now, they're not going to thumb their nose at a little channel catfish fingerling. But if you think about it, when you stock channel catfish fingerlings into an existing population, they're way, way more worried about not getting eaten than they are finding your fish food. But once they get totally acclimated and accustomed to that chain of events, meaning happy water, great habitat, a good food chain, then they'll become more responsive. So what I'm going to tell you is that just keep doing what you're doing. I probably would cut out one of the feedings. What I would probably do, I presume you're feeding at 5 a.m. because that's necessary. I think I'd probably switch to that 5 p.m. feeding and just feed that one time. Now, feed what the fish will consume within about 3 minutes, because that's enough. And I got some kind of an alert. Okay, that's nothing I need. No, I don't. I do not think that your big catfish ate the little catfish. I don't think that. But I also think that they're just as fearful about not being eaten. And another thing about channel catfish people sometimes don't know is they are real skittish. So when something hits the water, a bluegill is going to chase it, and a bass is going to chase it. A channel catfish is going to run from it. You know, if you throw a lure in the water, a channel catfish is typically going to run from it unless it's hungry, and those are bigger. So once those channel catfish get accustomed to your feeding habits, then they're going to be a little bit more at ease. I was going to say comfortable, but they don't get comfortable. They'll be a little bit more at ease to come and accept your offerings. Mark Wyman. Let's see here. Christopher was bush hogging after work. He made one pass and the sky's open. Boy, you guys just in South Louisiana, you just cannot get a break from rain. They need it out on the left coast. Yeah, Christopher says, that doesn't look like the RV or the truck. No, I'm not home. I'm at my son's home, daughter-in-law in Brenham, outside of Brenham, Texas. And Debbie, which I'm going to talk about Debbie here in a minute because that's pretty interesting. Clint Benbow. What's your thoughts on F1 genetics breeding out of a pond? Do you suggest draining and restocking about every 10 years? Our pond is about 18 years old and was stocked with F1s when it was built. We still have healthy bass, just not the size and aggression like the first group of F1s. Danny Mac, that hanging out offer would be my greatest privilege at the moment. You know what? We will do that. I promise we will do that. All right, you know what? Clint, I'm going to circle back to that question. Oh, that used to be one of my favorite phrases till Jen Psaki stole it from me. Doug Brown, 90 degrees. I always run the aerator from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. At 7 a.m., I have 100 feet area around the aerator of white foam bubbles floating good, bad. That's good. Because what that is that's the water relieving itself of those gases. So what happens is at 7 a.m., after you've run it all night long, the water is processing some of its organic matter, and you can probably detect just a real mild musty smell, I would bet. So that's actually a good thing. Steve Thorburn finally made it to the live version. Welcome, Steve. Philip Benefield, Christopher Aguilar, this is good listening while you're peeling purple hull peas. Dude, hope you got one of those vacuum sealers unless you got enough to eat in one meal. Jason Nepstad, Never on the Lake sent me a picture of what looks to be hydrilla. In short, what should I do to make a plan to kill it? I've spent the last 4 years removing carp, so that option is off the table. I was hoping lowering the lake could be part of this plan. Holy cow. Let me tell you about hydrilla. It's one of the most invasive plants, exotic species, not native anywhere in the United States. It reproduces 3 ways. It reproduces through rhizomes, seeds, and fragmentation. So it's not a matter of if it's going to become invasive, it's going to be more of a matter of when. Now there's several herbicides that will take it out. I would go to the Todd Sink's Aquaplants or Aquaplant website at Texas A&M, and it can show you your treatment options. Now, if it's just a small patch, I'd get a couple of guys and go out there and pull it out with the rakes and throw it up on the bank and get it out. And first of all, I'd identify it, be on the money, know that it's hydrilla, because if it is, and it's in small patches, get it out now. But don't break it up. If you break it up, get the fragments out, or they're going to float across the lake and root somewhere else. James Allen, I hear tons of horror stories about Eurasian water milfoil. That's all the grass carp left so far on that 80-acre lake, but the milfoil isn't expanding like as fast as I heard it would. Lots of filamentous algae on top. Typical clay silt, Kentucky lake, Setchi disc, 24 inches. Any thoughts on what's holding it back? What's holding it back? Well, the grass carp have preferred species that they like to eat. And it's not unusual for them to eat those first, but they'll eat milfoil. Now, it could be that there's just enough grass carp mass eating the amount of milfoil that's growing every day that they're keeping it where it is, but they're not ahead of it. And they probably won't get ahead of it until the milfoil starts going dormant. And one assumption that I'm going to make is those grass carp haven't been in there for a long, long time. David Schneiderman, what are your thoughts on adding F1 bass to an old pond with native bass population? If we do, how large should the F1s be to keep from getting eaten? I'm going to tackle genetics in a minute, but David, I'm going to tell you, and by the way, David, Easy Doc of Texas, and I think he sells docks all over the planet. Actually, he and I need to have a talk, because when they finally build a lake on Mars with a robot bulldozer, we're going to need to get a dock up there. We'll work on the water thing later. Okay, so what are my thoughts about adding F1 bass to an old pond with native bass population? I think it's a good idea. But what I would do is look at it two ways. If you can access some F1s that are half a pound to a pound and a quarter, stock those at about 5 per acre in a lake that is not held back by overcrowded northern bass. Now, if you can do that, then you got a home run. If you can't buy half to 3/4 to 1 pound F1s, and you have to buy the next size down, those are going to be 6 to 8s or 8 to 10s. Now, they're pretty expensive. So in that case, I would prepare the fishery to stock those F1s by harvesting as many of those overcrowded 10 to 12 inch northern bass as you can, and make sure the food chain's adequate before you add those bass. Philip Benefield, I have lots and lots of submerged carra in a 1.5 acre lake in middle Georgia. Lake is 6 years old, no grass carp. Planting some in the fall. Is it worth it to rake it out? Some from the shallow end. You know, I'll tell you my opinion about carra. I like it, which sounds a little bit weird, I'm sure. But what I like about it is that it's dense and it doesn't really manifest itself at the surface. The surface goes down to the carra. In the experience that I've had, carra is an algae, by the way. And if you go in and knock out that carra and you kill it, something else is going to grow in its place that you might not like as much. So I understand if the carra is around the dock or on the beach or somewhere that you don't want it, is it worth it trying to rake some of it out? Yes. If you want to access that shallow water to be able to use it, you can rake it out. And it's not that hard. It's typically clinging in very shallow mud, and it's pretty easy to get it out. So I would say if you want to rake some out, the answer to that is yes, you can. Let's see what James Allen is saying. Hydrilla, we lowered our lake 30 inches the last few winters to kill a variety of weeds, and it didn't help the weeds. There was too much sun too soon in the spring before we raised the level. It doesn't freeze out, and just got a good start in deeper water sooner. This past winter, we left it high. It seems better. You know, James, I like your thinking there, because some of this is related to geography. It used to be a standard recommendation through the Extension Service biologists that a winter drawdown could help. And it totally depends on the grass, the vegetation, and the winter. If you have a cold snowmageddon, snovid deal like we had in the South back in February, and your lake is drawn down, that can put some hurt on some plants. Now, plants that grow from rhizomes, all it's going to do is knock the plant back, slow it down a little bit, but it's going to come right back unless the rhizomes freeze. And if the rhizomes are any deeper than about 3 or 4 inches, typically, depending on where you are, they're not going to freeze. So let's see here, Brad Bowles. Will bluegills spawn more than once per year? Yes, they will. And it kind of depends on where you are. Like where I am in Texas here, in central South Texas, they'll spawn 5 times a year. Where I was earlier today and yesterday down south of San Antonio, which Danny Mac, I flew, okay? I didn't drive, right? I come by to see you. We'd have done the show from your sauna. Anyway, down there, they'll spawn 6 times a year. Now, in northern Oklahoma, 3 times a year. You get to northeast Missouri, twice, maybe 3 times a year. Northern Illinois, southern Michigan, once a year, maybe twice a year. So it's all temperature related and growing zone related. Michael Ehrig, we're looking to stock 50 tiger muskies in our 130-acre central Iowa lake. Tiger muskies will cost us $5 more. Oh, I see. Looking at stocking 50 muskie, and tiger muskies are going to cost $5 more than muskies. What's the success rate of true muskie spawning and growing to a big size? Muskie spawning in a lake that size is going to be pretty low, but it's not zero. Now, if northern pike, they're going to spawn in that lake. Muskies, not as likely. However, they could, depending on, but it's going to take specific water temperature, specific water movement, specific nutrients for them to lay eggs that are viable and they can hatch. Tiger muskies, they're not going to spawn at all because they're true hybrids. All right. Curious, does the pond boss like fishing to relax, or does the management cloud your mind? I do like to fish. I just don't do that a lot because I always have something that's fun to do besides that. However, when we get our place on the Brazos River and I get to tromp around in that river again, once I get my feet back in shape to go through gravel, then I'm going to figure out how to catch a few fish in that river. But do I like fishing to relax? I think probably a more honest answer is no. I don't like it to relax. I like it because I want to see what's going on in that lake. And so to that end, I used to be competitive, but not that competitive anymore. I tell you what's relaxing, Boudin man, sitting in your boat, throwing a lure, not caring whether I catch a fish or not, hanging out with you, watching you catch fish. Now that's relaxing to me. I mean, I absolutely love to provide the opportunities for people to grow big fish and have big times. So that's my answer. And I'm sticking to it. Hey, it's right at a little after 7. So hey, let's take a minute. Commercial Pond Boss magazine. Here it is right there. $35 a year. Say it with me. Cheaper than a Friday night date. And it lasts a year. Chock full of nuggets. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to proofread the September, October. It's going to go to print probably Monday and start hitting mailboxes right at the first day of September. So looking forward to that. Let's see. Danny Mac, you saw those sauna pics? No, I don't think I have. Maybe I did, don't remember. The other thing, I want to thank Purina Mills. Hey, I got a meeting coming up with Purina in a few days where we're going to sit down and talk about fish nutrition and talk about things that they want to do going forward with more research. So I'm kind of excited about that. So I'll get to hang out with David Nelson, who's one of the movers and shakers inside of that company, and then hang out with one of the nutritionists that's in charge of fish food, and then one of the regional sales guys. So we're going to have a good time talking about Purina Aquamax fish foods, the lineup of fish foods, and if it's meeting the needs of our industry and meeting the needs that you have for it. And we're going to talk about chunks in the bags. We're going to talk about availability. We're going to talk about distribution, as well as the quality. Christopher Aguilar saved money, ordered a 2-year subscription. Yes, he did. He saved $4. Attaboy. I love it. Texas Hunter Products. I love those guys as well. They sponsor this show too. And I love their feeders. I love their customer service. I love how responsive they are. If you're looking to buy a fish feeder, look at Texas Hunter Products. And they've got a variety of choices. And they stand behind their products, and I mean, they're machines, so every once in a while something will happen. A battery will die, you got to get another battery, a timer might get water in it, or which happens during an event, like when the pond rises up into the feeder, but they're an outstanding company. And then Easy Docks of Texas, we talked about David Schneiderman a while ago. He's a sponsor of this show as well. And we're looking at a couple of new sponsors too. So I'm pretty excited. This thing has gotten some traction and it's having fun. Now, I do want to talk about genetics a little bit. Where I was yesterday and this morning before I got back here, we started talking about the subject of genetics. There's Mike Cook checking in, Trevor Fry. Mike Cook, I got an email from somebody with the Boy Scouts a couple days ago. I'm probably going to email you and talk about it a little bit. So, and I did have a good conversation with the man that you referred me to. So I'm going to be interested in talking about that. And when it's time to talk about it live, I'll talk about it live. But we got to do a little more homework. So anyway, we started talking about genetics, and like the deer industry is way, way, way ahead of the fisheries industry about talking about and planning and working with genetics. Well, that's because when a doe has babies, it has 1, 2, or 3 babies. When a bass has babies, it has 100,000 babies, and they eat each other. So you can't really have a discussion about the genetics of fish that isn't skewed because of the environment. So there's some companies out there now that are figuring out, to the best of their ability so far, prematurely, which alleles might be the ones that lead to faster growth, bigger growth, aggressive nature, etc. And if they can isolate those alleles and then breed for them, then they're likely to be able to be more selective about which fish they use for breeding, and see if those alleles, those genes, that DNA can be passed on to the offspring. So there's, 15 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about this. We'd be talking about where the hell can we get Florida bass and other Florida bass? Where can we get F1s and other F1s? American Sportfish Hatchery, they're a sponsor of this show. And, American Sportfish Hatchery, they were the first ones to make commercially available F1 tiger bass. They trademarked the name. So, back even 15 years ago, it was, where can we get fish where we even know that the genetics are what they tell us they are? Well, now, with the kind of genetic testing that there is available in today's world, it's a lot easier to be able to tell, what do you have? Do you have an F1? Do you have an F2? Do you have an FX? Do you have Floridas? Do you have Northerners? What mix do you have? And probably for the last 17 or 18 years, you could figure out that mix to some reasonable extent and be confident of it. But what you couldn't tell is what difference does it make? So we've lived with the assumption that F1s are going to exhibit hybrid vigor, and they're going to grow better than any cross after that. So let's go back to that question. I've already forgot what it was. Let me go back here and find it. I told you we'd tackle that here in a minute. Okay, we talked about that one. Y'all bear with me 1 minute. Clint Benbow. Clint Benbow is also in North Carolina there, Jason Nipstead. Matter of fact, he's not too far from Mike Cook. What are your thoughts on F1 genetics breeding out of a pond? I think they can breed out of a pond. And there was a span of time, and I still do this from time to time, where I would recommend half Florida genes, half native or northern strain largemouth bass, put them together and let nature do what nature's going to do. If that environment's conducive to both, they'll survive. And I've always looked at it as an environmental issue more than a genetic issue. But I do know of some lakes where the fishery was eradicated as far back as 1975. Pure strain Florida bass were stocked just to see how well they do in Texas, for example. And to this day, the genetics are all Florida strain bass. And it produces a few good trophies. But early on, when I started helping with that lake around 2006, 7, 8, 9 through there, you didn't see the growth of all the fish like that because the food chain, they'd overeat the food chain. And so there's work being done now that is trying to drill deeper into the genetics of largemouth bass and see if they can select, pull out, grab fish with those genes and then cross them and see if they'll breed true. So it's going to be fun to see how that works. So to answer Clint's, yes, I think you can. I absolutely, let's put it this way. The F1 genetics have to breed out of a pond. Because when you take two F1s and breed them, they can't be F1s. Because to get an F1, you start off with a pure strain Florida bass, a pure strain Northern. You cross those two, the babies are F1s. So when those babies go have babies, what's their babies? Well, if they cross with an F1, then they're going to have a mix of genes. Some of those offspring are going to have a higher number of Florida genetics. Some are going to have a higher degree of Northerns, but they can't be F1s. So with the concept of hybrid vigor impaled in our brains, we have to presume that next generation is not going to be nearly as good as the first generation. Now, when you start throwing in factors like happy water, adequate habitat, a great food chain, and genetics, it skews the whole thing. So one of the things that I noticed that American Sportfish started doing a few years ago is if you stock F1s, give them a couple of years and stock more. Because that way you're stocking, it's recruiting. It's like the junior varsity, and don't totally count on the fish that are reproducing there to be good performers. But if you come back in and stock a few, 30, 40 F1s per acre every couple of years, then you're more likely to see those fish coming up taking the place of some of the fish that were spawned in there. So to answer your question, yes, F1 genetics have to breed out. It can't be any other way. We still have healthy bass, just not the size and aggression like the first group of F1s. So what my advice there would be the same as I told David Schneiderman a while ago. If you will thin out some of those bass, get their numbers down to make room for new bass, make some room in the home, get some mouths out, and then make sure that your food chain is adequate or better than adequate. Then stock some F1s next spring or even late this fall if you can cull some bass. Then you can get a pretty good injection of fish. Now, if you don't want to go catch a bunch, hire, here you're over in North Carolina, call Foster Lake Management Company and have them bring the electrofishing boat out and help you cull. On an 18-acre lake, if you could cull 180 to 250 bass with the electrofishing boat, that's going to make some room for your bait fish to just blow up, and then you can come right back and stock some of those F1s right on the heels of that after the bait fish are growing. And that's a good way to look at it. Now, if you want to do it with bigger F1s, you don't need as many. If you want to stock fingerlings next spring, stock more per acre because you're going to have attrition. So that's my thought about that. So there's what I got about genetics. Let me see if we got some new questions here. Let me scroll down here and take a look. Let's see here. I think I may have covered all those. Let me see what's down at the bottom. There's Wendy Heiss. Hi from Boise, Idaho. Good to see you. Good to see you, Wendy. Welcome. Travis says, what are your thoughts on the Titan bass from Greg Grimes? They are F1s. I don't think those are F1s. What I believe is Titan bass from Red Hill Hatchery. The genetic work that they're doing there is pretty dadgum impressive. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Because they're one of the folks out there that are looking at these different alleles and trying to segregate those alleles and then breed those and make sure that they've got fish of similar aggression, growth rate. And I'm sure there's going to be a little trial and error because it's fish, And those are not F1s, I don't think. If they are, then they're highly selected genetics. I'm going to call that hatchery tomorrow and have a conversation with them and just learn about what they're doing. Wendy's looking for a reference for fish stocking in the Boise area. I'm not sure what kind of fish you're looking for, but if you're looking for trout, I would go through the extension service there, talk to your county agent. They'll have a list of fish hatcheries. You can also go to pondboss.com and look in the resource guide. There's some folks in Montana, I think they're listed there, that could help you access, find somebody that supplies fish. Clint says, exactly what I wanted to hear. Good. Okay, super. So Christopher says, so if I move to Alaska, lock the gates, and leave the pond alone for, say, a couple of years, what's going to happen? I'll tell you what it's going to do. It's going to seek its own autonomy. It's going to seek its own balance. It won't be balanced long. Something is going to dominate it, and I'll tell you what's going to happen. What's going to dominate it is going to be directly related to how happy the water is and what can live in that water. The kind of habitat that you have. If you've got great habitat for threadfin shad, they're going to do great. If you have great habitat for bass, they're going to do pretty good too. If you have great bluegill habitat for bluegill, they're going to thrive. So if you've got good, healthy, happy water and the right kind of habitat for those fish, then a food chain that can renew itself and genetics are not an issue, even without a harvest plan, you're going to reach some kind of a level off, and that's what it's going to be. 99 times out of 100, people that don't manage a pond, you wind up with crowded bass because the habitat's inadequate. They overeat their food chain, and it gets upside down. And you wind up with a whole bunch of 10 to 14-inch bass. They're not gaining any weight. They're not growing. They're not thriving. And then you got to get back to that harvest thing. So while you're in Alaska, call old Ron Arglan, tell him he needs to go catch some fish out of your pond. All right, Trevor Fry, what does hybrid vigor also apply to copper-nosed bluegill or just largemouth bass? Hybrid vigor can apply to anything that's hybridized. Now, copper-nosed bluegill are just naturally aggressive, and where they thrive, they'll grow big. I mean, they'll be 3/4 of a pound up. I mean, I've seen copper-nosed bluegill in Richmond Mill Lake in North Carolina over 3 pounds. Bruce Condello caught one of those that we raised over there. 3 pounds and 4 ounces. Looked like it had run right smack dab in the back of an 18-wheeler going 60 miles an hour. Had a great big old forehead on it and great big chin. Nose was recessed, but that thing was about, I'm going to tell you, that thick. It was huge. Probably 10 or 12 inches tall and 14 and a half or 15 inches long. It was a beast. Ron Arduin can't catch his own toes, much less his fish. He's just using the wrong bait, man. I'm going to take up for him here. He's got to have better bait. So if you guys have any more questions, throw them at me. I do want to talk about something here, and all I'm going to do is state some facts. And this has been bugging me since I learned about it today. Debbie called me. Debbie is hanging out in the RV helping oversee our remodel of our house. You know what? I'm going to handle these questions and I'm going to come back to that. James Allen, thinking about buying into the Pondology Institute. Is there any sample of the video content? You know, James, I think I need to go look at that because I know we set something up so you can have an introductory video that can tell you what the Pondology course is all about. But here's the deal. We've got 22 different videos that probably run anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes or maybe an hour a piece. We tried to keep them, most of them under 45 minutes so that you would not lose interest in it. But it's premium content, and a lot of it's me talking about the different topics. But I've also got Mike Otto talking about building lakes. I've got other speakers that we videoed from the Pond Boss conferences. But if you will go to pondboss.teachable.com, you can look at it and click on it, and I'm pretty sure there's a video that explains what's going on. Those 6 different pods, you can see those when you look. So they range in price from $79 up to like $279 or something, or you can buy all of them for $4.95. And if you want to buy it and you tell me you want to do that, and you want to do it within 24 hours, send me an email and I will have Leanne create a 10% discount code for you. So you can save $50 right off the bat if I get a video, if I get an email past 7:19 tomorrow night, it's off. So if you want to do it, let's go. James Allen, I'd like to use it to convince the board to pay for it. I tell you what you do, James. You look at that introductory video, and if that doesn't help you, email me and let me think about that a little bit overnight. Bill Russell. Hi, Bob. I've been noticing in the mornings and afternoons that I have schools of threadfin shad working on the surface. I'm hoping that they are feeding and not a water quality issue. What do you think? They're feeding this time of year. Those things have finally surfaced to the top. They're gleaning food out of the water column. It's not a water quality issue in the middle of the afternoon. Travis hasn't seen Chico. Chico's been kind of wrapped up. Mike Cook just finished the course. There you go. That's it. There's your testimony right there. Thanks, Mike. Now, before I cut out of here in a minute, remember, hey, Pond Balls Magazine, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. Friday night date's over, and you're going to spend $40 on a Friday night date. Debbie is holding down the fort in Granbury, which is about 3.5 hours from where I am, because we're in the midst of remodeling the house, building. She wants a swimming pool, so we're building a swimming pool just up from the river. And so she went there to work with the contractor. Well, one of our running buddies, the next door neighbor, lady that's 65, 66 years old, she's got a little heart monitor and a little bit of COPD. Debbie went and hung out with her Monday night and spent a couple hours. They shared a cocktail, laughed and giggled, getting to know each other because we're going to be next door neighbors. Debbie goes about her business, and she gets a call today, and that neighbor is running 103-degree fever and is tested positive for COVID. So Debbie called me, not in a panic, not upset, but concerned. And she's more concerned about the neighbor than she is herself, because we've both been vaccinated. And one of the things that bugs me, the reason I want to talk about this is just within the last week, my daughter is a nurse at Baylor Hospital in Dallas. And they've seen their COVID numbers spike, and it's among almost all of them are unvaccinated people. Well, out of my Facebook friends that I know, there are 4 different people now that have tested positive. One of them at 62 died. There's another one on a ventilator that's a good friend of mine, and I think she's going to do fine. It's going to take her a while to get over it. Her husband is sick as well. And then there's another person that is showing some pretty serious symptoms, but is young enough that's probably going to be fine. Not one of those people are vaccinated. Now, I believe in freedom. I believe that we need to choose. I took that vaccine in January, and my logic was I would rather deal with the side effects of that vaccine than deal with the consequences of the disease. Debbie was a little resistant early on, and then our daughter-in-law, who's a pediatrician, and then my daughter, Lindsay, who's a registered nurse that helps run the COVID unit at Baylor Hospital, said, you need to do the vaccine. So we did. And my hope is to encourage some people and give you some confidence to do the vaccine. Now, do I believe the government needs to mandate it? No. I don't think the government needs to tell us anything what to do. I don't. I think that's our choice. But here's what I know now. Debbie's going to go into self-isolation in the RV, and she's at peace with it. Now, she's not so worried about getting the disease. She's worried about being a carrier and giving it to other people. So for the next 5 days, she's canceled everything she was going to do. She was going to go spend time with grandkids, go pick up a couple of grandkids, go pick up 3 grandkids and bring them back to Granbury to camp out with her in the RV and go look at the house. She's been cheated out of that. So she's not going to do it, which is prudent, and she's going to do the curbside pickup on groceries and all that. But her biggest fear is that she can carry that and give it to somebody else that doesn't need it. So I am totally for vaccines because of that. I am totally opposed to the government trying to tell me I have to do it. But I'm so thankful that Debbie and I were vaccinated, and I felt compelled to talk about that. And I know a lot of you guys are watching. You may be rolling your eyes. That's okay. But just in the last 5 or 6 days, when I saw a woman that was pretty healthy die within 6 days of this disease, it shook me. It shook me to my core. Made me thankful that I got the vaccination, and prayers for her because she didn't. And so that's all I got to say about that. So let's see if we got anything else here. Trevor Trevor Shotvet also went through the Institute of Higher Pondology. Trevor is 22 years old, and he said he binge watched the whole thing, and he took there's little pretty simple quizzes at the end of each pod that you get to take, and he did it, and he did pretty dang good on it. Travis says, we know you have a full plate at the moment. Just know we appreciate you making time for us. Hey, you know what? I'll tell you this. I'm as energized doing this with you as I am doing it for you. It helps keep my brain fluid, and I think it's incumbent on me to share with you the experience that I've had over my life and the things that I've learned and the opinions that I've got. Because if you've got an opinion, and even if I'm wrong, you've got something to compare it with, And so I do appreciate you guys watching this and spending time with me on this Wednesday. And I don't know where I'm going to be next Wednesday. There's a good chance. Well, no, I may be here. I don't know. I mean, my life is pretty much in limbo right now. Oh, Dave Weber got on me last week, which is hilarious because he's damn right. I paid the dumb tax. I told you guys last week what I did to my truck. Well, they also found a sensor that was out of my truck, and I get it back tomorrow, so I won't be begging for rides to go somewhere. So, Bob, come help me peel these peas. I need to show you how to snap those things there, Aguilar. Paul Teslino got a deer friend on the respirator right now. She's in an induced coma. This virus is no. That's absolutely right. I'm going to kind of wrap it up there. I want to thank you for taking time to hang out with me for this hour. And if you have some ideas for topics, throw them at me. Just email me at boblusk@outlook.com, and I'll sure entertain that. So I'm going to reach over here and turn this phone around and hit the end button. I'm going to call it a day. So until next Wednesday, adios.